So last week, I started my ranking of the One Piece story arcs. This is going to be part 2 of that series. So, if you missed part 1, there it is. Go watch it, and then come back, because we are about to hop into the last half of the list, starting right now. Number 15, Wano. So some people are going to be a little upset about my placement of Wano here, but hear me out. So Wano, for those that are not in the know, is the current and, well, still going on story arc. So because it's not over yet, I don't want to give it too much credit, if you know what I mean. Because while I do like a lot of what's going on in the story arc, we technically don't know the resolution, and you know there's always a possibility that something could happen that changes my opinion on everything so far. With that being said, though, let's talk about what we do know for sure. First off, Wano is beautiful. Like, whether it's the anime or the manga, I can just look at any scenery, anything from Wano, I'm just like, that looks so good. And another thing I like about Wano is the fact that it's a very uniquely structured story arc. So far, the entire framing of this arc has been like that of a kabuki play. So there's like hard intermissions and acts, and every once in a while we hit the end of an act, and it's like, oh god, oh no, what's gonna happen next? Definitely keeps you reading and or watching, which I have been a big fan of. Okay, but other than what I've talked about so far, what is it that makes Wano like really great? And my answer to that would be the fact that this has been a huge climactic part of the story that we've been building up to for like three or 400 different chapters or episodes. Like, if you think about it, the events that led us to this very part of the world happened all the way back in Punk Hazard. But like, other than that, like just the stuff that's going on right now, like the most recent chapter as of the time of recording this is chapter 1001. And just like, oh my god, the stuff that's happening right now is stuff that we wouldn't have thought was possible even a couple hundred chapters ago, let alone, you know, hundreds and thousands of chapters ago, right? So if I do have to give it some criticisms, in the manga, which is where I first experienced this, it was definitely a bit harder to follow. Like, I don't want to blame Oda too much, but when you're reading a black and white manga, there's a lot of characters that look identical, but they're not supposed to look identical. So every once in a while, I'll be reading a scene, and I'm like, "Who the heck am I even following right now? Like, what's even going on? I'm lost. Let me go back and reread like these couple pages now that I know what's going on." And maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. Did anyone else that read the manga, did you have a hard time following and like who was who and what was even going on for some pages? Let me know. And another thing is, while like the first couple parts of the story on their own are pretty good, I wasn't the biggest fan of them. Like, I don't have anything inherently against Act 1 and Act 2, but they definitely dragged a little bit at parts. And I know there's a lot of moving pieces to this cog that is the Wano arc. But for me personally, once we got to Act 3, that's when things really kicked it off. Like, honestly, if it wasn't for what we've seen in Act 3 so far, I might have put Wano down in the bottom half of the list. So with that being said, though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I'm already going on for too long. But Wano, it's great. It could be better, and it is getting better as we go further and further through it. But I'm going to leave it right here in the very middle of the list. Number 14. Zou. So Zou is a super unique location in the One Piece world, if not the most unique location. Like how many places can you say exist on the back of a giant ancient elephant that's walking through the ocean? Like, Oda. I don't know where you got the idea for that from, but you keep on doing what you're doing, alright? So one of my absolute favorite parts from Zou was the interaction we got with the minks and the bit of a flashback. I guess part of the story takes place days prior to the current events, so we get this very interesting build up to a potential conflict that doesn't quite pan out how we expected it, and that whole part was dealt with very well by Oda. Not to mention that in Zou, we get a lot of little details that kind of tie into everything else that's been kind of building up before Wano. Without Zou, we'd be even more lost and like more confused about how Wano acts or how it kind of works and all that. So thankfully, Zou was a perfect like build, like lead into what was going to come next. Also, let's not forget that Zou is basically the beginning of the end. It is within the Zou arc that we finally see like what the end goal is. I mean, obviously, we've known that like the end of the series is going to be get into One Piece, right? But it's only in Zou where that actually seems like a more reasonable and obtainable goal. Like we actually know how to get the One Piece now. Obviously, we're still working towards that goal, you know, as the time of recording, but the end was finally in sight after so very long. Okay, so far I've only said good things about Zou, and why is it 14 on my list? And that is a very interesting question that I don't know if I could really answer that well. And I guess my reasoning is I just slightly preferred some of the other stuff. I don't know, like it's hard to explain because like I do like Zou and I like the story that's being told at Zou, but I don't really have any major criticisms. It's a short, very sweet, very well worth the wait type of story arc, and I guess that's just a testament to how good One Piece is, that this arc that I don't have any real major criticism for is only 14 on my list. Yeah, I'm gonna go wrap this up because I'm also rambling for this part. Let's jump into the next one. Number 13, Jaya. So one of my favorite aspects of Jaya is how it is probably the most piratey of pirate places that exist in the One Piece world. Like, if you think of real-life pirates, what comes to mind? I'm sure this is going to be different for certain people, but for me, the image that comes to my mind are like the docks and the bays of like the Caribbean, and you got like pirates sitting in like bars drinking rum and stuff like that. And that is pretty much exactly what Jaya is. But on top of that, what else happens here in Jaya that really makes it so special? Well, first off, we got the introduction of the great mysterious Blackbeard. Now, Blackbeard is a weird anomaly. Like, even to this day, we still don't know a whole lot about him. There's still like so much mystery about this guy that's being built up as potentially one of the endgame villains, but at the same time, you can't help but like love him and want to keep knowing, learning more about him. And speaking of Blackbeard, there's that fantastic scene where he and Luffy kind of meet for the first time. Well, not for the first time, but they meet right after the little fight, and Blackbeard's talking about dreams and how pirates' dreams never die. And that just like really speaks to me. Like, I'm definitely a big believer in chasing your dreams. Regardless of how difficult it can be sometimes, you gotta fight for what you want. Also, let's not forget, we meet the asshole Bellamy here, and how that conflict gets resolved is so perfect. But yeah, and then other than that, it's another short, very sweet story arc that definitely lays a lot of the groundwork for what's going to come right afterwards. And special thanks to our dude Cricket and the story of Nolan the Liar for getting the events of Skypiea set up so well. So if I had to give some criticism, it's a bit on the simplistic side, which is not a bad thing necessarily, because we're coming right off of the heels of Alabasta at this point. It's nice to have a smaller, more self-contained little thing going on, and I think Jaya was the perfect thing for that point of the story. Number 12, Baratie. In my opinion, Baratie is when One Piece starts getting really good. Like up until this point in the story, everything that came before it was just kind of To me, once we get to Baratie around like episode like 18 or 20 in the anime or something like that, things really start clicking. I feel like Oda starts really nailing some of the more emotional beats he's trying to go for. I feel like the art style starts coming together. Not to mention, the action is great. So it should be no surprise. Obviously, I'm going to talk about Zoro's conflict against Mihawk here. Another French kiss, if you will, because that whole part of it was just amazing, and it's still one of my all-time favorite moments of the show. And then we got the conflict with the Don Krieg pirates. I won't get into that, but that's also really great, and I think it was a really big moment for Luffy. Then speaking more on Baratier as a location itself, it's super unique. Up until this point, we'd only visited kind of boring, generic-looking islands. And then we get to Baratier, which is a floating restaurant. That's just a big restaurant on a ship floating through the sea. That's awesome. That's cool. That is definitely more of the kind of things you would want to see from a pirate anime. So I guess you're going to be seeing a lot of this from here on out, but I don't really have any major gripes with this part of the story. It's fine. I guess the conflict against the Pearl guy was a little weird. I don't care. I don't really care too much for that, so I guess that's what's going to leave I guess that's why Baratier is going to be just outside of my top 10. Number 11. Dressrosa. Oh boy, okay, yeah, so there's a lot that could be said for Dressrosa, so I'm going to try to keep this a bit more to the point. Dressrosa is the longest story arc of the entire series, at least for now. Wano is definitely on track to surpass it, but Dressrosa is the longest at 101 manga chapters. So to accompany its sheer length, we have a very ambitious series of events that Oda is trying to pull off. So like you have the Gladiator Arena, you have the conflict with the Tantaras, you have Doflamingo's rule over the kingdom, the underground city of toys, and then there's the conflict with Caesar and Doflamingo, and then the admirals show up, and it's just like, oh my god, what's happening right now? So because of all that, it definitely feels overwhelming to read and or watch at times. And I do think by the time we get to the end, it mostly comes together. Like it everything kind of starts to get tied together in a knot, and it's almost there. Like it's almost the perfect story arc. Now, what I'm saying might not make any sense to some people, but considering that like the main thing that we were building up to, which was the events of Wano, spending all the time that we did at Dressrosa maybe was not completely necessary. There were definitely some fantastic moments for Luffy, for Usopp. Like, I'm satisfied with what I read, even though it took a long time to get through it all. And I wanted to give special mention to Doflamingo, who is one of, if not my favorite antagonist of the whole series. Maybe number 2. I don't know who I'd say number 1, or if I will even say who number 1 is, but Doflamingo is one of my favorites. And the fact that he gets so much screen time here is, I love it. So for the most part, the events leading up to Dressrosa were a bit on the rougher side. Dressrosa itself is also a little on the rough side because it's trying to do so much. But in hindsight, Oda did a good job. The Dressrosa in the hands of a lesser writer would have absolutely crumbled. I feel like Oda did the absolute best he could with what he was doing. And I think we just gotta kind of appreciate it in hindsight. Or if you're gonna go back through and maybe read the manga or One Piece, because yeah, it's a lot. Number 10, Sabari Archipelago. Sabari, or Sabaody? I'm not really sure how you say that.
There in the distance is Sabaody Archipelago.
So Sabari is one of, if not the darkest singular arc of the entire story. What I mean by that is because of everything going on with like the introduction of the supernovas, the human trafficking ring, just everything else that's going on. There's a lot to take into the story arc. It's not super long, and it helps to really bring the One Piece world together. Obviously, this is the very first part of the Paramount War story saga, and boy, does it really have me on the edge of the seat once the thing gets going. If there's a big takeaway from this story arc, it is that consequences have actions. Consequences have actions. And for the most part, up until this point, the Straw Hats have been able to get through everything they've gotten through with very little consequences. And it's not until right now where that hammer drops down and they have to start dealing with the fact that their actions have really agitated some people in the world. And it's at this point where One Piece feels more like anime Game of Thrones than just a simple pirate story. But some people are going to look at that and go, oh no, he said the Game of Thrones word. That's okay, I'm talking about the good Game of Thrones. I'm not talking about the horrible 8th season where things just... I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But yeah, like, once you get to this part, like, the politics of the One Piece world are really coming to their own. The big major threats that have been on the horizon for a long time are now actually coming into play. Stuff's getting very real. Stakes are high. And I just absolutely love it. Like, you can't tell me that this is not, like, close to peak One Piece in a way. Number 9. Impel Down. Who doesn't love a good prison break? Am I right? So my favorite part of Impel Down is the fact that it is our chance before the big, like, halfway point of One Piece to really get reunited with some of the previous characters. And as a result of that, we got a whole bunch of, like, team-ups that we never thought we'd see, never thought we needed. But once they happen, we're like, oh my god, this is amazing. Thank you, Oda-san. We appreciate you. And despite the fact that this is an arc that comes after some really dark stuff and is full of a lot of comedic moments, there's still a lot of tension. Like, the fact that there's always a clock in the background during these events. So whether things are going well, things are going bad, that's always in the background, and the tension is always high. Even when we're reading some funny panels, seeing some funny scenes, we know that we gotta, it's do or die right now. I don't know what I'm trying to say anymore. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Once you start getting to the point of this list where it's like, yeah, this is great. There's not a lot of flaws to talk about. It starts getting harder to talk about some aspects. But Impel Down. It comes right before the biggest monstrous event of One Piece. And I think it set the stage for that very well. It was the perfect little palate cleanser before what was to come. Number 8. Post Enies Lobby. So talking about the post Enies Lobby arc before the rest of the saga is a little awkward. I'm not gonna lie, but I'll do my best. So, we just got done with some hugely monumental world-changing events. And what is the best way to then recover from that? Well, clearly, it is obviously one of the absolute saddest scenes in all of One Piece. Oda, the magnificent bastard, manages to make us cry over an inanimate object. This man makes us cry for an inanimate object. The Mad Lad. Alright, but on top of that, that's not all we got going on here. So on top of everything else that's happening, we got the introduction of a character that I'm not going to mention by name, but you know who I'm talking about if you've seen it. And he just comes in and it's like, hey, let me spit some facts about the world that is just going to completely change your perception of a lot of things. So that happens, and all of a sudden we got the revelation of who Luffy's dad is. We got the introduction of the Four Emperors. And it's like, oh my god, can we pump the brakes right now? There's a lot happening right now, and I'm not ready for this. So honestly, there's a lot of potential for the post-Enies Lobby to be higher on some days, but I'm going to keep it here at number 8, because on its own, it's not really a story. On its own, it really is just, okay, let's go back and just tie up the loose ends from Water 7 and Enies Lobby before we head into the next saga. And I know I gave a lot of other story arcs flack for not really being their own thing. They're more just there to wrap up loose ends. But Post Enies Lobby is probably one of, maybe the second best at doing that. I'll talk more about another one a little bit later on the list. But yeah, it was just a short portion that had so many iconic moments and reveals that I have to give it the props that, I had to give it enough props to make it to the top 10. Number 7. Alabasta. When I started writing the script for this video, I honestly thought I was going to have Alabasta in the top 5. And well, here we are, it's at number 7. Alabasta is probably the part of the story that you're going to get to and just go, wow, this is something special. What Oda is doing here is absolutely phenomenal. So the Alabasta arc is the big climactic conclusion to the second saga. In a way, it is very much One Piece's version of the Namek Frieza saga for those that are Dragon Ball fans. In it, we actually get introduced to a big conflict. We have an actual civil war going on. We have this character who is actually under the protection of the world government, using that power to corrupt a whole nation and seize power for himself. And it's like, oh my god, this is not just a pirate story. We're not just here having a fun adventure now. Things are getting kind of serious. And what makes Alabasta work so well were the arcs that came before. I've already talked about most of them. You know, we got Little Garden, Drum Island, stuff like that. A lot of those spent portions of their screen time setting up the events of Alabasta. The mystery of who is Mr. Zero? Who are the Baroque Works? Can we even overcome them? How are we going to overcome them if we get to Alabasta? What is going to happen? How can we save the princess? And boy, did that turn out quite well. So if I had to lobby some criticisms to Alabasta, the first one I would have is the fact that the entire thing takes place in a desert. Makes the environment kind of samey and boring to look at after a while. In hindsight, it's not a very long story arc, but at the time, it was the longest part of the story, and we really did feel the fact that you were just looking at sand and desert towns for the entire duration of it. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but does anyone else feel like the conflict that led to the beginning of that civil war was not very natural? Like, I know there's a person behind the scenes pulling the strings, but like the way it's depicting the start of that and the conversation that led to the beginning of this rebellion, it didn't feel very natural. Like, I feel like people were just being vague intentionally for some reason, which I wasn't a big fan of. But that's more of a minor gripe. Overall, I would say that Alabasta was the very first attempt Oda did at a big mega arc. I guess you want to call it a mega arc. And he nailed it, like, on the first go-around. I would say, though, for the most part, like, besides maybe Dressrosa, every future attempt at a big mega arc was a bit more successful, but I digress. Overall, Alabasta, awesome. Probably one of the big highlights for a lot of people. I know it's only number 7 on my list. I thought it was going to be a top 5, but as we move into the rest of the list, you'll see my reasons for that. I think I was going to say something else, but I kind of lost track of my mind. So we're going to go ahead and just wrap up this and move on to the next one. Number 6. Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island! So Whole Cake Island is one of the most creatively designed locations in the One Piece world, in my opinion. Now I say that, and the idea of like islands made out of food is not inherently the most unique thing in the world, but I think the way Oda does it, and the way he's able to combine various aspects of like the Disney Wonderlands and the Alice in Wonderland type places, all into one location, was very well done. Okay, so Whole Cake Island's purpose in the greater narrative. It is the Straw Hat Pirates actually stepping up and proving that they are an actual force to be reckoned with. This is the first time in the series where the Straw Hat Pirates actually go toe-to-toe against one of the Emperors of the Sea, and I won't spoil how it goes, but they make their name known just by initiating some sort of conflict. So I already mentioned an Emperor of the Sea, so as you would imagine, the cast of villains at this part in the story, phenomenal. The entire crew of the Redacted Pirates, I love them all. I think they're all super interesting designs. I think they'll have really cool powers. I think they're appropriately powerful for this point in the story. And I can't talk about the cast of villains without talking about perhaps my absolute favorite antagonist. I know I said I wasn't going to mention him, but here I am. Mr. Katakuri. I can't talk about Whole Cake Island without talking about Katakuri, guys. And without a shadow of a doubt, the battle between Luffy and Katakuri is the absolute best of the entire One Piece series. And considering that One Piece is a shonen battle manga, having high praise for a particular battle is very important. You know how important a battle is to a battle manga. Like, I urge you, if you've never seen One Piece before, but you're here for some reason, go and look up clips of Luffy versus Katakuri from the anime, and it's so good. I absolutely love that part of the whole event. I love going back and rewatching that part of the anime. It is so well done. Oda, another French kiss for you, sir. I love it. Oh, but real quick, so if I do have to give a reason why Whole Cake isn't top 5 for me, I do think the second half of it is a bit dragged on longer than it should. I know a lot of manga readers are going to complain that there's like 30 chapters devoted to a chase, and it's true. I mean, it's not just a chase. Obviously, this is the point of the story where we got the Luffy versus Katakuri fight, so it's worth it in that sense. But like whenever it cuts away from the fight, there's pretty much nothing happening for like 30 chapters. So for that very reason, I have to knock it down just a little bit. Number 5, Arlong Park. Yeah, so I wasn't expecting to put Arlong Park so high on my list when I first made this. But lo and behold, as I was thinking about it, the more I was like, yeah, like, Arlong Park is such a huge deal for One Piece. I mentioned earlier how the Baratie arc was when One Piece started getting good. Well, Arlong Park is when One Piece starts getting really good. Like, if you get to a certain moment of Arlong Park, I won't describe it, but there's probably an image here for those that have seen it, they know. This is hands down my absolute favorite scene in all of One Piece. It's not very long, but the build up to it, the way the events prior to that were written by Oda and how they all came together for this one hugely emotional part was phenomenal. And the thing about Arlong Park is, in my opinion, it's early enough in the series that I think if you're someone that's trying to get into it, you could definitely push forward and get to the Arlong Park arc relatively easily. Because it's such a well-composed story, Arlong Park that is, if you get to this part of One Piece and you watch it and you're like, I'm not hooked, I'm not like a lifelong fan at this point, you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of One Piece. So because of how much Arlong Park means to me personally and how much it means to a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, I really had to give props to Arlong Park. Like, it is definitely the part where One Piece really becomes what it is. Like, before this point, we were recruiting the different pirates. It's a lot of recruiting, it's a lot of meeting new people, and it's like, okay, where are we going? How is the rest of the series actually going to be? We're not just going to be recruiting people forever, right? Well, thankfully not. That is not the case. Once we get to Arlong Park, the Straw Hat Pirates are actually an established unit. This is when they actually work as a team to overcome obstacles. Again, I've already said it before, but this mad lad, Oda, damn, you're so good at what you do! Oh, Arlong Park, guys, if you haven't seen it before, or you haven't seen it in a while, go back and rewatch that part of the anime or manga. It even on its own, it's just so damn good. So, Kyle, if it's so damn good, why is it only number 5 on your list? Well, my reason for that is because this is still relatively early in One Piece's life, so as you'd expect, like the art style is not quite as good as it's going to be later, and the way Oda does action is not quite as good as he would do later on as well. Like, in all honesty, the actual Luffy versus Arlong fight is not bad, but it's not particularly great. And for the most part, it's a bit on the forgettable side compared to a lot of the other battles, even what came before. Like back the conflict against Mihawk and Don Krieg set the bar really high, and I don't think Arlong quite reached that level that had already been set. So because of that, Arlong Park gets knocked down a couple pegs from where it could have been. Number 4, The Reverie. Oh boy, guys. Okay, so The Reverie. In the manga, this is a little 7 chapter segment that comes right before Wano. And despite the fact that I think it's tied for the shortest story arc in all of One Piece, oh my god, so much happens in just a couple of pages. Like, I don't want to spoil it for obvious reasons for people that have not seen Reverie yet, or they're still trying to catch up with the anime for some reason. But yeah, like, there's stuff that happens in this short period of time that completely change your perspective on everything that's happened so far in the story. The fact that Oda is able to reveal stuff like after 900 chapters that is still blowing people's minds, it's still changing the perspective of everything that happened before is incredible. Throughout One Piece, you get a lot of these little arcs that are more info dumpy. They're more about the outside world, giving context for stuff that's going to happen later. And Reverie is pretty much the epitome of that. So like I've said before for other ones, on its own, there's not a whole lot that really happens at Reverie. It's a whole bunch of world nobles coming together and they're talking. But when you combine the political forces of One Piece and have them all gathered together in one location to talk about stuff that's happening, some pretty serious stuff happens, as you can imagine. Also, I haven't seen the anime's adaptation of the Reverie. I heard it's very long and convoluted for what actually happens. My advice, read the manga because it's only 7 chapters. You can read through the Reverie in like an hour or less. So, but because the Reverie can't really stand on its own as a story arc, I'm gonna put it here at number 4. But man, my mind was absolutely blown when I was going through it for the first time. Number 3, Enies Lobby. So I think a lot of people would have Enies Lobby as their number 2 or maybe their number 1. But for me, it's only number 3. Now, obviously, I don't have anything bad against it. The fact that it's this high in a list of powerhouse arcs already gives it a lot of credit. So what is it that Enies Lobby accomplishes that I like a lot? For one, I think it might be the most action-packed story arc. It's debatable between a certain other arc. But for the most part, I love the action of Enies Lobby. I think when it comes to like one-on-one battles and kind of the building conflict of what's going on, this is probably the peak for One Piece. Now, some people will view this as a criticism, but for me, it's definitely a big bonus. And what I'm talking about are the fact that a lot of the Straw Hat Pirates get big power-ups at this point in the story. Now, a lot of these just kind of come out of nowhere, unexpectedly. Sure, but let's be honest. They are things that the Straw Hats have been needing for a while, and when these power-ups finally do get revealed, they are amazing. Like, at its heart, One Piece is a shonen battle manga. So what better way to celebrate that by giving your heroes a bunch of power-ups, doing their new transformations or whatever, and just kicking a bunch of booty. But with all that said, you might be thinking that Enies Lobby is just mindless battling. And no. Enies Lobby is one of the most emotionally driven parts of the story. What I mean by that, it's not like it's not like a plot that is compelling the characters to do what they're doing. They're doing what they're doing because they don't want to lose their friend. They're fighting for someone else. They're fighting because someone else made choices that they may not have wanted to make. Yeah, doing a spoiler-free talk of Enies Lobby is kind of difficult. I'm not gonna lie, but for the most part, like, I think there's some absolutely phenomenal character work going on, especially for Usopp and Robin. I already talked about the big power-ups and the battle sequences. Those were fantastically done. But I've mentioned the emotions. And I think that the flashback, the big primary flashback that we get for this part is probably the biggest example of that. In it, we get to witness the complete and utter destruction of an entire civilization of people. We find out how that went on to further change it's kind of changed the world as a whole, how it changed specific characters that are part of the Straw Hats. And Mick, can we talk about the standoff and the event that happens immediately afterwards with the Straw Hats and the world government? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like the fact I'm just kind of staying here talking about Enies Lobby is actually getting me a little emotional. I need to cool down, guys. As you might have already noticed, I talked about the post Enies Lobby earlier, and that just kind of carries a lot of the emotional baggage that was left over from Enies Lobbies. Some very sad scenes happen, some very emotional aspects. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. If you haven't, if you're at this point, you haven't started One Piece. What you doing? Go watch One Piece. Do it. Do it. Number 2, Water 7. in my humble, honest opinion, I do think Water 7 is the best written arc. And what I mean by that is because of all the different moving pieces Oda has going on in this part of the story, I feel like the way everything moves, like the flow of events, the way the characters behave, everything feels the most natural, and it's the most satisfying when plot starts to happen. And speaking of the characters, I feel like this is probably the best dialogue that Oda has also put into his story. This is especially true when I'm talking about Usopp, who at this point in the story he's just kind of there. He's that annoying, awkward guy that's on the crew and sometimes says something funny. He's had a couple of moments here and that were cool. But Water 7 accomplishes the enormous task of making Usopp not only a more relevant character, but like one of the most relevant of the entire Straw Hats. Now you might be thinking, Water 7, what kind of name is Water 7? Well, that's the name of the island. And can I say that the island of Water 7, oh boy, that thing is just gorgeous. Now, supposedly it's based off of the real-life city of Venice, which, yeah, I can totally see it. Yeah, I think the composition of all that is just absolutely fantastic. Not to mention that there's just so many other cool things going on. Like, we have the sea train that is also just so cool to discover and learn how it works and like what kind of implications it has for the world along with the Straw Hat crew. But going back over to the writing, the drama, the suspense, the mystery that is being set up. Like when we first get to the city, it's like, oh no, what happened to Robin? Where'd she go? Was she hanging out? She was hanging out with some mysterious person. What's up with that? What is going on? And I must say, I was just completely hooked. I was on the edge of my seat. Episode after episode, while things were just unfolding, we learned a little bit more about the city, learn about the sea train. Stuff happens. I'm just like, oh my god. Somebody help me. I can't handle what's going on right now. Now, I think a lot of people would probably put Enies Lobby over Water 7, and I respect that. I think for a while I was. It's kind of a last minute thing that I did. I decided to put Water 7 above it, because I feel like that is just the part of the story that stuck out to me a little bit more. Now, that could change pretty much any day of the week, I feel like. But right now, today, at the time of writing this, Water 7 is my second favorite arc of the entire One Piece story. Number 1! Marineford. Well, here we are, guys. We are at the number 1 position. And my pick for, well, my personal favorite story arc, it's Marineford. And how can it not be? Oh, I like Water 7. I like Enies Lobby more. Okay, fair. You can have your own opinions, but I'm gonna go with Marineford. And oh boy, what can I say about Marineford? Basically, somehow Oda managed to just very subtly and very steadily build up to this humongous event over the course of like 400 or 500 chapters, and somehow the culmination of all that is this story where the Straw Hats are not really even the central focus. Like somehow we get a whole portion of the story where these side characters that we've seen very, very little of are now the primary driving force of what's going on. And it couldn't be more amazing. So what do we get? We have an entire war. Like, we have basically One Piece's equivalent of Endgame going on here. And there's just battles going on over the place. We are introduced to just so many new characters in a short period of time. It sounds like it'd be overwhelming. But no, because of the way the One Piece world has been set up, we feel like the coming of these different factions all together in one place feels supernatural. Like trying to sum up how the Paramount War comes together here at Marineford is super difficult. Like it's one of those things where you need to experience it to really get the full grasp of why this portion is just so incredible. And somehow, despite the fact that it's not very long, like I want to say it's only 30 episodes long, so much happens. Like in 30 episodes, we get more content, more stuff happening than in some of the like 60, 70 episode long story arcs, which is fine because if everything was this breakneck pace, it would be so exhausting to, take in One Piece. And let's not forget that the events of this war, the events of Marineford, were so great that we had to basically hit the refresh button afterwards. We had to do the time skip. We had to get the characters to do the training arcs. And as, obviously we all know what happens at Marineford, and I'm not gonna say right now, but if you've seen it, you totally know why it makes sense why they had to do that. So, because of the incredible action, the incredible scale, the spectacle of the entire event, I have to put Marineford as my favorite of the One Piece story arcs. Oh boy, well guys, that was one hell of a trip down memory lane for me. Now I'm sure your own personal picks for the best arcs are going to be very different than mine, or maybe not. Either way, what I want you guys to do now, go ahead, put your top 5 or top 10, or put some of your favorites down in the comments. I want to see how everybody else's lists compare to mine. Also, with that being said, throughout the year 2020, I had such an amazing time diving into this brand new world, learning about everything that took a lot of people like 20 years to get through, that I managed to binge through in just a couple of months. So, in 2021, I want to keep that trend going. I'm going to be being a lot more ambitious in my diving into some new animes or some new mangas to see what really is the best of the best. This is why I have decided that the next video I'm working on is going to be a blind deep dive into the world of Vinland Saga. Here I am going from pirates to Vikings. Seems like a pretty natural transition if you ask me. So if you want to join me on my adventure through a brand new series, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you don't miss when I get that uploaded. Obviously, I need to go watch the 2 seasons we have out, so I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna go experience the story, and then I'll be working on the video. So I'll get you guys again very soon once that's all ready. But until then, thank you for being here. You'll have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.